Today we're going to talk about what was probably one of the best Marvel television shows and finales they've ever had. We're talking about Daredevil, Born Again Season 2. Here we go. All right, so I'm Kyle. He's Robbie. We have a podcast called Friends from Work. Let's get in with our first impressions. If you're just finding this podcast, we like to start way zoomed out and then we'll slowly zoom in as the episode goes along. I have so many thoughts. I went live on YouTube last night for an hour after the finale. Rob, I haven't talked to you about it at all. I thought it was absolutely spectacular. One of the best things they've ever made. It's the highest rated Marvel television finale or episode, I think, period, on IMDb at this point.
Oh, wow.
My big takeaway is that it felt so rewarding and tied together. In the first season, which we liked, Daredevil Born Again Season 1, we liked it, but it really felt kind of segmented. There was the Hector Ayala stuff, there was the Muse stuff, and then there was kind of like this third and final act between Fisk and Matt. Yeah. But it felt kind of like, here we are here, and now we're going here, and now we're going here. This felt like they paid off everything they've been working towards for me. Like, they set up Heather and Muse, and you get a little bit of that. They set up that Hochberg is kind of a douche, and then you get kind of follow up on that.
Right.
They set up that all these side characters, that Cherry made another appearance. Obviously, for it to come full circle with Matthew as Matthew taking down Wilson and not as much Daredevil taking down Kingpin. They come full circle on Jessica Jones, and it made sense why she was there. And the secretary or whoever, the governor, comes back full circle. I thought the BB video hit like crack. Just a perfect time to play the last BB video and have that kind of come to me full circle and be tied up. So I really feel like they landed the plane on all these things, and all the threads they had been pulling on made one nice sweater, I guess. Excuse my analogy. Like, it did come together, and none of them felt really wasted to me.
No, I think that's right. I mean, we talked last week about how they were setting it up to have, like, they could have, in a lot of ways did, just do the human drama piece, a la Loki season 1 finale, with less action. And I mean, the first half of this episode was that, and it was great. And man, I think that in that sense, they not only delivered on the promise of the last episode, but I think, they landed the plan on all of the like anti-vigilante, like Safer Streets court stuff that they've been setting up with Kirsten. Like, the Matt courtroom stuff in the finale was so fun to watch, and it was like some of the best Charlie Cox
my favorite thus far in the courtroom. Just to see them actually shouting at each other as it was kind of going off the rails.
It was like so A Few Good Men.
Yeah.
But I thought, I mean, even just him walking in the door and like before he even reached his counsel table, is lodging objections. And then the him and Heather tension is crazy.
Yes.
Like
pre and post reveal that he's Daredevil. Because there's kind of some cool tension early on when, she's on the stand and he's having to interview her. And then you get this look from her after he reveals himself to be Daredevil. Yeah. Where it's kind of making sense for her now.
But it's also like, I mean, I don't want to get too far into this because we're at the big picture level, but I mean, based on that line she's reading from her book, she
hasn't a guess.
She has to know a little bit, like
something.
Even if she doesn't know, she knows.
Yeah, something.
But like I thought all of that was handled so well, and I want to talk about it more in detail here in a bit. But then on the flip side of that, the action that we did get was, I mean, we got a Kingpin hallway fight.
Dude, just Okay, so people on Instagram last night talked about how him saying "boo" was very much like Darth Vader in Rogue One, that final hallway fight.
Right.
That's one of the greatest things you've ever seen in cinematic history. I don't know if I go that far, but to go back and forth between Daredevil plowing down one hallway, just murdering people. I mean, the guy that he breaks his back over the wall is just unbelievable. And then it's flashing to Daredevil and Jessica Jones doing their hallway fight and like all these parallels. Like at the very end, they're both tired and the door is both cracked half open for both of them. So good. Not to mention, it just looked so cool. There were gunshots going off on Daredevil's side. And so the lighting of like the flashing in the background while they're doing it. Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
We're going to get into it. We have so much to get into. Holy cow.
Oh, I think in general, I think they landed it so well in terms of an entertaining finale. But I think the biggest win of the whole thing to me felt like and I don't know if this is controversial or not, but the Matt character piece, like that thematically, I thought is what was handled the best. And I think, which is the most important thing for a Daredevil show, that you handle Daredevil correctly.
Those were my two first impressions. That was my second one. The fact that it comes full circle to Matt giving Fisk grace, remarkable. Remarkable on so many levels to me. One, it's just straight up different. That's one thing I appreciate. If you go back and watch Netflix season 3, which might still be the best season of Daredevil they've ever made, when you go back and watch that though, Matt is the one who has given up on the system. He is jaded and flirts with the idea of killing Kingpin because the court system isn't working. So the fact that in this season, they kind of flipped that on its head, and that Matt has been resolute in that we're not going to cross this line, even all the way up to the very end, that he's trying to stop the citizens. Like he could easily just walk away and it wouldn't be his fault that Fisk gets murdered by a bunch of citizens. But he is the one fighting to stop and give him grace to keep him alive. The fact that Matt never wavered in that is already unique. So that's one thing I love. The second thing is, to take it full circle, the first season of Daredevil is so much about Matt seeing Father Lantom after every fight and really wrestling with how his faith plays a role in this and what role God has and what role grace has in this. So to have it kind of come full circle, we've talked about this with Thor: Love and Thunder, that at the very end, it's not a fight. It's not a showdown between the two of them. It's actually the opposite. It's like, this is so beyond fixing via us punching each other, that the only thing I can do is give you grace. And then Wilson saying, no, you can't give that to me, I thought was genuinely moving. And so all the questions I had about, remember last week I talked about how Matt hadn't had a lot of screen time in that way, and like his character was different for the whole season, but wasn't like moving a lot throughout the season. I think the fact that we got all this time of him aggressively taking him down in the courtroom, then obviously the fighting as Daredevil, but then the saving at the end kind of brought the whole thing full circle for him as a character.
Well, and, playing into, which they're explicitly leaning into his faith here, like you're saying. And a part of that also is that, like, in order to both save the city and, save the city by taking down Fisk, he voluntarily sacrifices himself, by outing himself in the courtroom. So there are kind of layers to, like, he could have not done that and found a way. I mean, they already had I guess, like, the attempted murder charge on Fisk that the mayor could have run with regardless. But I think that part of what Matt wanted to accomplish was not just taking him down again. I think there was this level of like, we are both, like, we've done that already. He's been to prison several times. Now it has to be something, where we have to kind of both take ourselves out of the game. And that I think added a lot more power to like that final conversation. And it was just nice because it's like he took the leverage that Fisk thought that he had there in the end and turned it against him. And it's like you weren't quite sure how that was going to play out, so I think it was both like a fun twist in the moment, but it was also, I think, like thematically consistent and I thought satisfying. And as we'll talk about in a second, there are a lot of different kind of fun things that they're matching up from the comics that I thought they handled really well and kind of worked in very naturally. So I thought it was both like satisfying on its own terms, but it also did a lot of other things really well that, again, as someone that's enjoyed a lot of the Daredevil comics, from like 2000 to now, they worked in like a ton of fun Bendis, Brubaker, Zdarsky stuff. And, the cliffhanger ending sort of promises a lot more of that.
I'm trying to decide how to pace myself for today's episode because, so obviously the reveal is a giant first impression, such a crazy, powerful moment. So I'm going to get into that in a second. Then during friendly feedback, I do want to talk about specifically how that was handled. And then during the MCU greater discussion part, we got to talk about kind of what this means for Matt going forward. And then I want to do another episode, a reflection episode that we can really get into where do they go from here. Mm-hmm. Not just what does it mean, but like how can they, so I'm trying to pace myself. On the last first impression front, I thought the reveal was so powerful too. Not just, it's going to be really interesting because we've only had Matt kind of hiding his identity for, 5 years, 6 years. So like you said, there are things we can talk about. But the build up to that, the way that Kingpin knew what he was kind of doing and saying like, this is a mistake, I wouldn't do this. And the way Matt kind of called his bluff and almost outsmarted him because of what you were saying, that he knew he had to take himself off the table too. Yeah. I also thought it was probably my favorite Karen. So here's a little bit of redemption. Like as someone who said, I've never been totally in love with Karen. I thought her acting to Matt doing that and realizing what that meant was very powerful. I also loved seeing a little shot of Heather, Kirsten, Buck, and Powell all kind of being like, what? Right. And then they all had their own little different reaction, which I love that in superhero movies. When the identity is revealed, I love seeing the reaction because I think to myself, if this was real, what the heck would I be thinking? And then when he throws the walking stick against the wall and catches it again to kind of prove immediately that he actually is. So I thought also that reveal was just ridiculous. Yeah. Okay. You brought up the comics. Let's tell people about Panel-Bound Comics, and then let's come back with some friendly feedback. What do you got for me with Panel-Bound Comics, Rob?
Man, well, per usual, by the end of a Daredevil season, I feel like they've sold out of plenty, but there are still a couple of super relevant things there. If you look for the first volume of the Bendis run, which I actually recommended in our newsletter a couple weeks ago, and also the first volume of the Brubaker run, which is called Devil in Cell Block D. It's one of the kind of great high points of the modern Daredevil stuff. I mean, Brubaker is one of those kind of prestige writers that doesn't really miss. Kyle and I talked about his Captain America Winter Soldier story a couple months ago, but that, one of the fun things about the Daredevil comics that we've talked about is each writer really since Bendis has played this game of leaving Daredevil in an impossible situation at the end of the run, or at least putting the writer in an impossible situation where they have to figure out what to do with the character now. And, Bendis has Daredevil's identity come out in his run and then sort of leaves him in jail. Like that's the last scene. And then Brubaker picks that up and runs with it and then leaves him in a different spot that we can talk about later if it comes up. But this is playing a lot into that stuff, and those are really, really great modern comics, great intros to comics, period. So you can find both of those on Panelbound Comics if you are curious. And those are the kind of paperbacks, so you're not having to drop something crazy.
And if you go there, don't forget, use our promo code FriendsFromWork, all one word. Panelboundcomics.com, promo code FriendsFromWork. We'll be right back.
I'm very happy right now.
One more word, please. Give me one.
Woo!
You over the top, don't you think? I thought it was spot on.
All right, so some friendly feedback. What worked with this episode and I guess season a little bit, and what didn't work? I have so many things that did work. We talked about the big first impression things. I want to just give a couple little shout outs here. Shout out Cole North. I mean, we circled that this character was starting to turn a few episodes ago. I mean, I remember all the way back to last year when you were like, this is so weird because Cole North in the comics is not this kind of character.
Right.
And to see him question things and then eventually lead to the best gun headbutt in history straight to Powell's face was very satisfying and fulfilling. And then shout out to Powell, because I thought about this last night. I talked about this on the Instagram Live and the YouTube Live. That guy did an incredible job, because just straight up, I hated him all the way to the end. And he never wavered. It was just, he was truly awful. I mean, Fisk is awful, but he was just like awful. And so he did his job. So shout out Powell too. Shout out that Jessica Jones came back and that it wasn't just a one episode thing. Shout out to one of the coolest White Tiger reveals that they just quickly slid that in, and they had her fighting looking like a tiger, like the crawling off the wall thing was really cool to me. It wasn't overly done. It wasn't like, she made some crazy last heroic stand. It wasn't like she called a bunch of animals to come help her, but just that, like, in the middle of the hallway fight, you all of a sudden see this girl go like off the wall and she's beating the guy with the thing. I thought that was cool. Cheerworthy moment. I thought the fake Bullseye thing
I was about to say that. Yeah.
Was a cheerworthy moment. Putting that all together. My wife was like, wait, because she thought at first that was Bullseye. So she's like, yeah, Bullseye's here. She loves Bullseye for some reason.
I mean,
and then when
same.
it's actually the fake out and he's still here kind of doing the right thing, or maybe not the right thing, but the helpful thing at the moment. I have so many, we can touch on all these in a second. I think let's kind of finish here. Shout out to the BB thing. Like I said, I think that was a perfect time to bring the BB thing and the Daniel thing full circle, to have Daniel be in that video. And then lastly, I think it's a really appropriate ending, because even though Fisk in a way is getting off a little bit easier than you would think, like he's literally killing people, the more I thought about it, I'm like, well, first of all, he could probably argue some form of self-defense, because they were rushing him, like it's a mob rushing him. So yes, it is murder, but he could probably pull some strings there. And then secondly, to get off a little bit easier.
Yeah.
But then also, he talked about how without Vanessa, now love is his prison. It's kind of ruined his life that he doesn't have her. And so I thought, that last scene, yes, he's on a beach and that seems really great. For him, I think that's awful. They made the point of earlier, he said he hates it. Remember, he hates the sand between his toes, and he can't not be in New York doing things. So for this guy to just be relegated to hanging out on a beach without his love, that is a prison to me. That's awful for him. And so I feel like that was an appropriate ending. That was a rapid fire. Those are all some things that worked for me.
No, I'm okay. I kind of want to start where you ended. That's a really good point. Because you put him in prison and you put him in a situation where he has strings to start pulling again.
Right. He doesn't like it, but it's a little bit more familiar territory for him. And, it's kind of comfortable.
He can't not do it. Even if you put him, I mean, that was the thing that was so magnificent about season 3. Is it starts out and you're like, how is he going to come back from this? And then you see the pacing of it, and it's so believable.
Yeah.
And
the slow burn.
Even when everybody is against him, he's going to he finds things. He's got like however much dirt on people. So yeah, I think that Matt knows that you just put him back in prison, and eventually you're going to wind up in a similar spot, or at a minimum, people are going to get hurt because of what Fisk tries to do.
That's right.
So I think
you have
you're
to
right.
kill
I
him,
think that
or
is,
you have to get him out of here.
And that's also exactly the way that the Zdarsky Devil's Reign event ends. So that was true there as well. I think they did a good job of adapting a lot of that, but the end is basically Fisk just he leaves it behind. And so they were kind of channeling that. But yeah, I think they did a good job of setting it up ahead of time too. I was curious about, like, there was a part of me that thought, okay, he's rejecting this deal. And I guess you're supposed to think that. And he's going out of the hallway, and yeah, he's murdering people. So at that point, I just assumed the deal was off the table.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was curious not from Matt's perspective, but like from the AG's perspective, from the governor's, like, what is Fisk's leverage in that negotiation at that point? Like, are they just, because now, like, ostensibly at the start, they're trying to like prevent some kind of violent explosion, but then that happens. So I don't know why they would even keep that deal, even if Matt wants it. Like, why would the government keep that deal open?
For a lack of a better word, I think we just kind of said it. You may not believe it fully, but the headcanon is that, like I said, one, I think he could legitimately argue self-defense. Like, he doesn't, like, he says open the door, but they are clearly beating down the door already at that point. So they're attacking him too. So I think that's one argument. And then you've already seen that he can corrupt the courts and all these things. So I don't think it's that unbelievable to say that if he had another trial, he could find a way to argue self-defense and kind of manipulate his way out of any heavy charges. And I wonder if the attorney general just kind of understands that. Like what you said, what Matt understands, which is that this has now been years, like a decade of this guy, no matter where we put him, ruining things. I mean, obviously when you first meet him, that's a different thing, but then he goes to jail, but even in jail manipulates things. Then he kind of gets out on house arrest, and that doesn't work either. Kind of manipulates that. And now he's mayor, and that doesn't work. So I'm not saying you have to believe it. I'm not trying to argue you into it, but I think the headcanon would be that, they just know this isn't going to work a different way. Or you kill him. Is the only other option, I think.
No, I mean, I guess it's,
but I hear you on that though.
I mean, it in fairness, it's kind of like what the French did with Napoleon, I guess. Sure. Like when someone's got that much of a following and can, I mean, because that's the other thing. Like, we saw all the people that were rising up on behalf of, like, the anti-Fisk movement, like the Daredevil folks. Yeah. But I think that there are also a decent amount of people in the city, or we're supposed to believe, that do believe Fisk has done the right thing. And so maybe it is like, if we have this big trial here, it's going to like entrench this level of division, where if you can just pull him out entirely, then you can actually maybe start to move forward and get past it. Mm-hmm. I thought that the final fight scene is something that I kind of already want to watch that whole sequence again, because I thought the back and forth and seeing Jessica there, I think, was really satisfying. I thought that seeing Matt in prison with Powell and North was like, I mean, there's so many places that they can go with that. Like, I don't know if that means that we're going to have more of Powell in season 3, but it's sort of like, it's a nice, like, Matt was willing to put himself in the same position as these guys that have hated him and like murdered people and did it willingly. But Yeah, I mean, I think each
By
of
the way, prison is such a perfect ending for any character that you want to sideline and not have to answer for. Like, think about Vulture, right? Like,
Right.
prison's perfect because you could argue whenever Doomsday happens and whatever the fallout of that is, no one's going to be asking, where's Matthew? Why isn't he helping with this?
Right.
Because he's in prison. But as soon as you are ready to tell a new story with him, you can write some way that he gets out of prison.
Yeah.
And same with North and same with Powell. It's like if you never want to write another story about them, if Marvel comes in and Kevin says, that was a great story, let's just end it there, then you can just end it. They're in prison for life.
Yeah.
But if you're like, hey, this Cole North character would be kind of fun to have out, there's some way to break him out. So it's kind of like the perfect, cake and eat it too situation.
Well, and I love that he's in there with North specifically because that's one of the relationships that that Chip does a great job developing through his entire run. Like Cole North is introduced in the very first arc, which that one arc is one of my favorite Daredevil stories ever. And he's introduced as, like I've said before, he's not crooked ever like he is here. He's kind of the opposite. It's almost the like he's hated by the other cops because he is a stickler for process and like keeping things like upright ethically. And so he goes after Daredevil because he views Daredevil as, it's not that he thinks he's a bad guy necessarily. Initially, he's hunting him for like a murder charge. But then eventually it's just, no, like you're operating outside the law and that's enough. And so I'm going to bring you down because we have a system and things. But then for a variety of reasons, they wind up having to work closer and closer together. And then you see how their relationship changes and evolves. So I like the idea of those two guys being in prison together and probably the only guys that would really see eye to eye out of everybody in there. So I think that sets up a fun relationship.
That's cool. I didn't know that.
I also, which we haven't talked about yet, but the ending with Jessica and the Luke reveal sets up all kinds of things that we could. I almost thought that there was going to be, and I'm glad that there wasn't because it would have been too much. But like I've said before, like Luke becomes mayor in the aftermath of Devil's Reign in the comics. And, I will note that the version of Luke that kind of comes out of that event has the beard and everything.
Interesting.
So like even the character design, they seem to be echoing that. I don't know if that's intentional or not. But I thought that was like the exact right amount of Luke Cage to drop in. Like I think
and he was out fighting and he was eventually replaced, I guess, by this Bullseye new role for him. So I guess Luke was, to answer our question from last week, he was doing some somewhat shady CIA stuff, right?
Yeah.
Is the understanding.
Yeah, I guess so. But like we said also, like Bullseye is the perfect candidate for them. I was curious, what was the purpose this season of Jessica's power glitches?
Yeah, there isn't one. I do wonder if that's laying the groundwork for next year or something else that they're working on with her.
I feel like it must be.
Yeah, because otherwise I don't think you include that for any reason. And then she didn't lose any of it during the final fight, as far as I could tell. She was just normal. By the way, which is totally fine. Not every single thing that you introduce has to be wrapped. Like that doesn't make or break the story if you don't know why that's a thing yet. But
no,
if it's one of those
I
things
think
where
I would
like
have more issues with it if we weren't getting a season 3.
If they never come back to it, then it's a little bit of a thing. Like, why did you do that? But I think they'll come back to it.
How about the Heather Muse mask moment?
Yeah, I mean, okay, I don't have like a hot take on it. I don't like love it that they're doing what we kind of predicted, and I don't like hate it. Like I just it's a thing. That's another one of those things. Let's kind of see how that circles back around in season 3. And then if it's a really cool, like well executed story, I think I'll always look back on this season going, oh, see, that's when they started it and that's really cool. Which is obviously what they're doing, right? Like this is not the end of her character. I think my favorite shot from the whole situation was when she put the mask on, what she sees in the mirror now is like a really happy, like normal version of herself, which is really twisted, but it's kind of like her embracing that. Also, her doing the throat punch is kind of embracing that too. And then Buck, we didn't really get a lot of resolution on if he is dead or not. It seemed like he was dying. But same like what I said with Powell and North. I think if they come back and say, he died, then you'll be like, oh, that makes total sense. But if you say like, oh, he survived it, they got him to a hospital. If they want to tell more stories, then you'll be like, okay, that's fine too. You know, they kind of left it open-ended.
Yeah, I did think that was interesting that we didn't see a final shot of him either in prison or not. Because
he wasn't in prison. That's a good call out.
I mean, so Fisk is gone. And Buck is the one that was closest to Fisk, but was also not officially involved in the same way that the task force guys were. So I'm not sure how easy it would be to pin anything on Buck if Fisk isn't there. And I mean, I guess the task force guys could kind of speak I mean, like Powell, if he wanted to flip, but Powell doesn't really seem like the kind of guy that's going to flip. But anyway, I think you're right. They could go any number of places with that. I did think, just because that made me think of Daniel, the final shot of BB at the bulletin, I thought was really great also with Ellison.
And also seeing the Ben Urich articles. That's what I mean by they all kind of got some level of resolution, and it made it not feel peripheral. In fact, the whole season did a really good job of making the BB reports feel really integral, I thought, to this. Way more than the first season for me.
I think you kind of previewed this before I think we ever even started watching, that this would try to kind of clean up some Netflix stuff. And I think what I'm really impressed with now that we're on the other side of season 2 is they had all these Netflix shows, and they were out there for a while just kind of dangling, and we didn't get any resolution prior to Endgame, and then we didn't get really any sense of what they were going to mean even once we had D'Onofrio and Hawkeye. And then I guess like with season 1 of Born Again, they didn't yet know when they were starting what it was going to mean, and they were kind of trying to like, I think, appease both sides, and I think it wound up
right. Like Frank was there as an example.
Yeah, but I think that I mean in the initial version of season 1 before they kind of retooled it, it seems like they were basically going to keep Matt and Fisk and try to kind of move it forward beyond that.
Right.
But I think like the things about season 1 that felt a little messy or disjointed at times, and again, I think that was overblown. I don't.
Right.
We say that in part because we know that that's what happened, but also I think now that you see how they played it all out, not only did they wrap up all these things that maybe didn't seem like they were fully necessary in season 1, they also did a great job of kind of putting us now at a point where, like, they did all this work to make the Defenders stuff feel genuinely like canonical. It's not just, oh, it did happen, or now Matt knows Jessica, so that means they must have met and fought together in Defenders. Bringing Ellison in, bringing Luke back, it's not that they have to now do a ton of stuff with that, although I saw where Brad Winterbaum said that Luke will be a big part of season 3. But it's more just that now they have kind of put everything back on the board the way that it was circa 2018, before there was all these cancellations and confusion and how did things all link together. And so, to your point, maybe they never do anything else with BB Urich and Ellison. Maybe they never, even if they didn't do anything else with Luke. I think it's still now kind of nice resolution going all the way back to these 2015 through 2018 seasons that people watched and then felt were kind of left in the dust.
I want to do a entire podcast episode on what you just said. So again, I'm sitting here thinking, I don't think I should answer that and get going on it because I think we do a separate reflection episode. I had a weird experience last night, a gift actually, where my wife had a small group, so I watched it immediately in time. So I watched it from like 8 till 9 and then jumped on Instagram and then YouTube live. And then my wife came home and she wanted to see it. So she was like, no, when I walked in on YouTube live, she was like, no. She went upstairs. Well, then after I wrapped it up, we watched it again. So I got a chance to then think about it again all last night. So I've seen it twice already and think about it. And I already have like an overall reflection episode like we used to do with movies, that I want to come back to because I think there are so many things. So I'm gonna put a pin in that. My plan is that Friends from Work Plus listeners will hear that episode first, and then that'll become available on the main feed when we talk about that reflection. Let's get into how does this affect the greater MCU at large? So just following up after a quick word from these sponsors.
Oh, by the way, this is a friend of mine.
I am Groot!
You save the good stuff for special occasions?
So this is the first time this season, I think, where our just following up section is going to be somewhat lengthy, just because this feels like now we kind of know, as you were just mentioning, how is the table being set? Obviously, we have Matt kind of left in prison. We have Fisk on the beach somewhere. Luke Cage makes an appearance. Where does that go from here? We see that Mr. Charles is now kind of back to his shady CIA stuff with Bullseye. Could that be? Could that spin into a larger MCU thing? Is that a special presentation in and of itself? Is Bullseye joining some version of a? We talked about the Dark Avengers a lot around Thunderbolts, and it really kind of wasn't that necessarily because all of those characters are a little more, they were like good people, I think, that just had a little bit of a troubled past kind of thing. Whereas like there are a few characters out there like Bullseye who are a little more, if it's a scale, right on the scale of like just kind of a psychopath, that you can aim a certain direction and it can be very effective for you, just like Fisk did in season 3. So I wonder if that starts a new kind of team, like a truly dark team, and who else could be on that is an interesting thought.
Yeah. That is fun to I feel like there are some characters out there that we could think through for staffing purposes.
And I feel like, and this is a hint at my reflection episode, I was two things are true at the same time. I always say that, right? Like two things I feel equally passionate about. I'm going to use a parallel to the John Watts Spider-Man trilogy. I think the John Watts Spider-Man trilogy was virtually perfect. It's an unbelievable telling of what a young Peter Parker is like and his coming of age. But like we said, I just finished No Way Home in my rewatch. We say so many times, if they go back to that in Brand New Day, the tone, the age, like the problems that someone has of that age, those relationships, if they lean heavily into that territory, that's a huge mistake in my mind. Now the table's been set, we're going here. I feel that way about this now. This was so good. The mayor thing worked so well. I think at this point going forward, it would be a massive mistake to go back to any kind of like political thing. Like I don't want the third season to be anything about like a public figure like the mayor. Oh, when you do a mayor thing, inherently there's built-in hurdles that you have to headcanon about like, okay, this is a really public figure murdering people. How is he going to get away? Like they didn't even really address how does Matt have an attempted assassination on his life in the parking garage the night before, and he still shows up, and there was no addressing of someone tried to kill him post the thing. And if Powell had the fake Bullseye kill Matt, what would have been the legal justification for now that Matt came out as Daredevil and he's assassinated? How can they get around that? All those problems are practical problems that only arise when it's a public figure like a mayor.
Yeah.
When Kingpin is in the shadows, you can do that stuff. And it's just like the headcanon is people don't know who's doing this stuff. Like it's hard to guess why it's happening. So my point is, here's my point. On all these different levels, I really am ready for next season for them to not play the hits. So to the degree that they did honor so much of the Netflix stuff, and again, two things are true. It was basically perfect.
Yeah.
I really feel like the solution for next season is to go a totally different direction. I don't think you can have Fisk come back. I don't think Fisk can just leave the beach and immediately be pulling strings. Like, how is that not belittling what happens here? And I know that it's so weird because he's one of the greatest villains in comic book history. But at some point, there has to be an ending. In fact, there were a few comments on my live the other night of like, I've gotten a little bit tired of Daredevil versus Fisk. And I don't feel that way. But I get what they're saying. Like at some point, there has to be a different villain. At some point, I don't want to do the political thing again. And now that we have Matt's identity revealed, maybe that's a new thing to spin into. But here's my last thing. I don't want to do the Netflix thing again. I love the Netflix thing, but I am so ready now. This is going to be the hot take. This is the title of our whole episode. You know, people are going to clip this, but it's like, I am ready for the Disney version of Daredevil now. And maybe the version of it is now let's do the MCU version. Instead of Daredevil interacting with Luke Cage and Jessica Jones, I'm fine with Jessica Jones being around, but I want to see Daredevil interacting with Bucky and Yelena. What does Daredevil do with Tombstone from Brand New Day? What does Daredevil do with Red Guardian? Because he's down the street. Like, how does Daredevil get affected by what happens when Thor shows up or Doctor Strange again? I'm not saying he has to be an Avenger, but it's just like a different tone that I'm ready for. Like season 3, I don't want season 3 to be Danny Rand back, and I don't want and Luke Cage is the main figure, and you know what I'm saying? Like that's one direction. I want to go the other direction now. Like let's let Karen be a thing. And now it's done. Like maybe she goes back to the Bulletin and that's it. Like we don't need Karen in his life every day. I want does that make sense? I want the other side of it now. Spider-Man. I want Daredevil and Spider-Man. That's his problem now. Spider-Man, not Fisk. Sorry, that's a bad example because obviously Spider-Man's not the villain, but you know what I mean? Like I just want him in that world. That's a huge rant about the greater MCU of it. Is that crazy? Is that a hot take? And all while saying this, I think it was perfect.
So so what, you just wanted to swap out the horns for Mickey ears now? Is that what you shill? No, I'm with you. I mean, look, the thing is, Daredevil has since day one, like everybody else from that kind of classic Stan Lee Silver Age era, operated within the Marvel universe. And that means that, I mean, in the first 10 issues of the Daredevil comic, you see him work with the Fantastic Four. You see him work with Spider-Man. Like, that's not a forced thing, you know? And even in Born Again, the comic that we read, one of the moments that's really memorable is when
Avengers.
The Avengers show up. Yeah. And him interacting and kind of giving a unique ground level perspective on what the Avengers are doing and having conversations with Captain America and
Iron Man.
And so I think that is not like, if people view that as somehow antithetical to Daredevil, then they would have to ignore some of the most foundational Daredevil stories.
Thank you.
So I think there's a lot of room for that. I mean, Spider-Man is the most obvious candidate, and I think we saw a hint of that in Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, which I thought was so fun then, and I think we're getting more of that in season 2 of that show.
And he is going to be in Brand New Day, isn't he? Isn't he? Your friend Dan Gavazin is right, I think. I mean, is it just chance that in the trailer, Spider-Man's in a prison fighting the Hand?
Oh, I didn't even think about that.
I mean, come on.
I mean, man.
His identity is revealed, so Spider-Man would be the first one to think, oh my gosh, my lawyer that caught that brick?
That's true.
That's Daredevil.
That's true.
I don't want to speak it over us to where we're disappointed if it's not happening, but Dan's right. I think it's happening. That shot in the trailer, I think, is
Yeah.
Daredevil edited out.
I mean, I think, and that was Dan's theory too.
Yeah, I think I'm subscribed to that as of May 6th.
I will say, when I look at stuff like this, I always wonder, okay, does that make sense for people that are not watching anything but the Spider-Man movies? And to your point, yeah, it does, because they introduced him in No Way Home.
Movie.
So they could totally follow up on that. So that, I mean,
it goes back to last week. That's the only, I guess, it's not even a what didn't work. It's bordering on what didn't work. My wife and I, after I was stunned by the finale. I went live for an hour talking about it. Just like, oh my gosh, it's one of the best things I've seen. I've already acknowledged it's one of the highest rated television shows. So like, I love it. And then after all that calmed down, my wife and I are sitting on the couch and she is like, come on. Like, this is going down, and Spider-Man or like Yelena can't
someone
hear
posted
about
in
this?
our Discord, the Spider-Man 2 is
like what Spider-Man's been doing. He's like eating a hot dog and walking down the street. I mean, this is happening in his front yard.
Yeah.
And I get the rights thing, but back to just as a fan, the plot thing, that's BS. Like, at some point, if you have this large scale of a thing, you can't justify it that Spider-Man wouldn't be around.
Aren't you? I mean, I'm also really curious to see how the Punisher special links into this. If it's really kind of an entirely independent thing, or if it is following up on any portion of Born Again, because I also wonder, how has Frank not just assassinated Fisk by now?
Right, but or just all the goons. Like Frank would love just killing all the cops. The ATV,
and there were so many opportunities where he would just, Daredevil held himself back, and
he could have come up with a gun and just mowed down all those dudes.
Yeah. So I hope that that's something also that's addressed. But I think what's nice about this season is that it not only goes back and does the Netflix stuff a service. I do think that, one, I remember at the very start of season 2 reading stuff from the producers and the showrunners saying that this was this was going to be the culmination of the kind of political thing, and that they didn't want to do that in season 3, that they wanted to kind of get back to the street level Daredevil stuff. Mm-hmm. So unless something changes based on what they had initially said, it sounds like that's their goal, is to kind of now start back fresh. And that's another thing I thought was so impressive, is they did all of this and they cleaned up so many things. But also the benefit of all of it is, I think because of the way the Netflix stuff happened, and when the cancellation fell, and then the blip, and then COVID in real life, I was always kind of confused about whether people even really knew about Daredevil as a thing. There's a joke there in She-Hulk when he shows up and she has no idea who he is.
You mean in the MCU, people?
In the MCU. Like, if it was like, how much are people aware of Daredevil? And then you get another little shot in Echo of them fighting during the blip. So now you know that he was at least active again then, post season 3 in the suit.
But even before he revealed his identity, this season really went a long ways to say, like, he's kind of the leader, he's famous to the city, right? Even before the identity reveal.
Right. Like, I think there was a lot of that in season 1, in that people were talking about these things that were happening because Daredevil wasn't out doing stuff. And so you kind of get a little bit of that thing we talk about liking in Spider-Man 2, where when he's off the board, there's a real impact on the city because you have this one guy that is that integral. And they started to set that up really well in season 1. But yeah, by the end of season 2, they have made it to where Daredevil is now kind of a top tier name in terms of famous superheroes, and then especially because of the big reveal, where it's the first time something like that has happened in that way since Iron Man, which was also kind of a fun callback to the foundational MCU moment. And so I think that now moving forward, like it always was going to be a little bit weird if they suddenly tried to have a scene with Daredevil in Infinity War, which is something that I know a lot of people were hoping for, or Endgame, just because they were just so far removed.
Agreed.
Like by the time you got to season 3, especially, it just did not feel like it was in the MCU at all.
Right.
But now that feels totally natural, because I think that he would now be a world famous person because of what's happening. Like this would be like global news.
Well, add him to the list of slightly superpowered humans that identities are now public. So that's a small category, but there's a few people.
And I think that the role that he can play, where he now has a certain level of moral authority that I think is fitting for Daredevil. I also like that element, like what you're saying, that he doesn't have super strength. So there are some really great, when you're talking about Daredevil within the Marvel Universe, there are some really memorable moments in the comics. Like there's one where the Hulk is on a rampage, and the only person that is in New York to try to stop him is Matt. And obviously that's just, he's so outclassed, but they lean into that. And so they kind of try to, it's this like against all odds, again, the kind of Captain America standing against the army at the end of Endgame. Like you can do a lot with that, about like this guy that is superpowered, but is not capable of withstanding a ton of damage.
Yeah.
And so it like ups the stakes, but it's also, again, he's kind of been elevated as a leader. So I think that they have now defined him in the eyes of people within the MCU, such that whenever he comes into that, he has a specific role to play. He's not just like ninja in the shadows guy, which is kind of what I think he would have been if they had tried to introduce him back in that era.
I think that's a really great call out, and I totally agree. Also, you were just mentioning his power levels. You know, Annika and I had the discussion last night about, I think it is a very select few characters that I get frustrated with not knowing, Spider-Man being one of them, right? Like if all this is going down, as I talked about, Spider-Man's the one that's there. There's a reason why I bring up Yelena and Bucky, because they're in this Avengers Tower right around this moment. I don't know if it's supposed to be right after or right before or whatever, but like they've now publicly been announced as a new Avengers team, and they're a street level, power level, similar type people that are just down the street in New York. And the person who kind of manipulated them into becoming this team maybe works with Mr. Charles, who's now doing this here. So there's not really an excuse to me, headcanon wise, why there wouldn't be some reference or shout out to those people. But as my wife pointed out too, Marvel has a way of being able to get around a lot of this stuff with a lot of characters, because I think it's pretty easy to say Doctor Strange is there, but he is protecting realities. Like no one knocks on his door to be like, can you come stop this crime?
Also, he might still be in the dark dimension.
Right. But so like there's practical answers to a lot of characters. So even though I ranted about it, it's a rant about a select few, right? Thor makes sense with what he's going on. The Guardians of the Galaxy makes sense. Bruce Banner maybe even doesn't know yet how to like shift into a Hulk mode that's controllable to stop a crime. Like he may just be trying to avoid becoming the Hulk, period. And so like you don't go to him to, you know what I mean, to stop a crime. So my point is you start going on the list, and it's like there are a lot.
Even if you had Tony still in play, I don't think that he would go to the courthouse.
I think Tony would legitimately say, this is below my pay grade. I think that would be the running gag there. Like, I have bigger things to worry about than 100 people assaulting the courthouse.
Well, because I think Spider-Man is the one that would show up to prevent people from getting hurt, at least, if not to capture Fisk.
Yep.
But yeah, otherwise, it's not really it's not that kind of crisis. It's not that what you needed there was more firepower. And I like
right.
that they did a good job of showing that.
But again,
if
Spider-Man
Luke
would
Cage-
help because he could web him up, non-lethally.
Yeah, but it's not like-
Bucky doesn't help a ton because he comes in and just shoots everybody. That wouldn't work.
And that's why I just wonder what, even Yelena, what would she think she needs to do?
The closest thing would be like using tech to debilitate Fisk. But
it's
she
not,
can't get into a punching fight with him, obviously.
And it's a protest that's kind of boiled over in this controversial court case. I mean, it if anything, it kind of has these like echoes of a Rodney King thing. But you can imagine
it's maybe Spider-Man and maybe Kate Bishop specifically. I'm trying to think of a few others.
The people that know. I mean, I've also
Ghost would be a fun character for Daredevil to be involved with, by the way.
Yeah. I've wondered too why Maya would not have reacted to any of this.
What about Sam Wilson?
Yeah, Sam's a good one. But again, I guess we don't really know.
He's in DC, and I mean, I guess Maya, you say she's in Oklahoma, I guess.
And I think, I think that like and maybe
she has a pass with Fisk to maybe where she's like, I'm washing my hands of this. Like I did my thing. And
I think that is kind of the sense you get. I just watched Echo recently. That is the sense you get at the end of that. But yeah, I mean, I think you can explain it for most people, and even Sam. Like I think there's never really a moment when you feel like Daredevil and Jessica don't have it under control at that point.
That's a good point. And what does Sam actually do in that moment anyways?
Yeah.
He doesn't know Fisk, so it's not like he talks him off a ledge. Not more than Daredevil could.
And even Spider-Man, I mean, you could argue that, I mean, everything that really happens that would take it to the level where Spider-Man needs to get involved directly, at least when it comes to the finale events, is all happening inside the courthouse. And I don't know how much that's being broadcast and how quickly all of that turns. But when it's just everybody outside of the courthouse chanting, like that's not necessarily like, yes, if Spider-Man's around, you can see him coming. But I think that you could argue if he's somewhere else stopping some other crime or fighting somebody, I don't know that this is the thing where there's an obvious need for him to solve up until you get to the point where Fisk is murdering people.
I appreciated the National Guard line for that reason. That's always like a little Easter egg to be like, call the National Guard. Well, it would take hours and that gives them the war they want. That's like to the fans being like, this is why everyone else is not showing up. This is all the people that are going to show up. So, don't ask about that.
I do have a question. Maybe my last just following up piece. Well, no, that's not true too. One, the Mr. Charles thread, it doesn't feel like that's the last of that, right?
I don't think so.
Because not that I think that it wasn't. I mean, I thought that they did really great stuff with that character, but it seems like they gave him a lot of screen time
for him to kind of just be beat and then leave.
Yeah, and not even necessarily beat, just kind of he's around, he has to deal with Fisk, it doesn't really work. He gets the governor on his side, and then he swaps out Luke for, I mean, we get some more background with what's going on with Jessica, but I think given the fact that we've heard there is more Luke coming season 3, I have to imagine that's kind of part of that.
I think on a list of everyone who had their storylines wrapped up perfectly, he would be down the list. Like it still worked, but that wasn't like the foundational takeaway. I agree.
He wasn't. Yeah, I mean, I think as it stands, he was a very entertaining character to watch, and so in that sense, he was a valuable part. But you could also pull that character out without really impacting a lot of the major plot points.
I think it's just trying to say the higher ups in the government are not happy with Fisk, and he's the mouthpiece for that.
Yeah.
that vehicle.
But I think what I hope is that he does become the bridge to what's going on with Val. And I think that that's such a great way of doing that. And that leads me to my actual final point, which is just what happens with Fisk moving forward, what happens with the Daredevil world, because I do think they've done the Matt Fisk thing so well in so many ways that they can't go back to that, at least not the way it has been. On the other hand, if they do wind up merging these things and we ever want to get a Spider-Man Kingpin showdown at all, then you would have to bring him back into the fold somehow.
I know. And how do you do that? How do you do that?
Like him going into exile is a thing that's happened in various ways in the comics, like I've said, in Ultimate Spider-Man, where Kingpin is a major villain. They do it really memorably, where after he is kind of outed for murder, he flees the country, and then it's almost like season 3 where he buys himself back in and then somehow climbs back to the top. But that would ring a little hollow, to your point earlier, based on what they've done here.
Yeah.
And
on that front, it would be a bummer that we never got Spider-Man and Kingpin. So hear me out on that. That would be a bummer. I could also be okay with sacrificing never getting that interaction for the greater good of the MCU story.
Yeah. Unless, I mean, the thing that could be interesting, and I just don't know if they've set this up or not, but if you wound up with him in an entirely different context where they want to keep D'Onofrio. I mean, we've talked about the role that like Norman Osborn plays in this Bendis saga era of comics that they're kind of a little bit pulling from with the Thunderbolt stuff. And they kind of put Val in that role in the movie. But if they wanted to create a situation where Fisk, like in the comics, Osborn is initially running a Thunderbolts team that then kind of becomes the Avengers, and that's the Dark Avengers. But prior to that, the idea is you're a quote unquote reformed villain, so you know how these people think. You're going to lead this other team of reformed villains for good. It's kind of the Suicide Squad type thing. And I don't know, maybe since they're kind of setting that up a bit with the Mr. Charles stuff, they could try to work on something there, and there would be a really interesting tension and
that
dynamic
Fisk was
between
involved
Fisk and
with?
Bullseye. No, but I'm saying he could be he could fill that kind of role, in that he is back behind the scenes and doing sort of shady stuff, but not back trying to take over New York. And in that sense, I think it would work, because he is a guy where you have to imagine he can only sit on the beach for so long before he starts scheming in some way.
Right. He's going to have to do something.
But it doesn't have to take him back into New York. It could be something else where he's using his connections.
But that's why the only logical end is death for him at some point. Because otherwise, like, even if Spider-Man gets involved, what does he do? Web him up? And then ultimately he goes back to jail or back to exile? Like, it's a never-ending loop until he dies. Because Fisk either needs to be like super terrifying and pulling all the strings in New York, even if it's behind the scenes, or he needs to be like totally off the table. The only other thing I can think of is that in the Spider-Man video game, the very first mission is you take Fisk down, like physically, you beat him down, you send him to jail. And then the rest of the game, you still have to deal with the ramifications of that, which is that look at all these other crimes that are happening now because there's a void left from this power vacuum. And like occasionally Spider-Man calls Fisk from jail, where he's still running things and he's still like, has his bases and you're taking down his construction sites, etc. So even though they kind of did that in season 2, could there be some version of, even from the beach, Spider-Man's having to deal with all the fallout of like AVTF people or other business things that Vanessa and Fisk had their hands in, and that like eventually escalates with Fisk makes an appearance back in New York and Spider-Man has to physically stop him? Kind of the inverse of my story, maybe?
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know.
I also wonder if the reason I'm even having this thought experiment, I just don't know if they can leave D'Onofrio behind entirely, just because they have really, I mean, I remember a lot of the reviews of season 2 on Netflix were like, we really missed D'Onofrio.
Yeah.
He is as much the protagonist or antagonist, but he is as much a main character as Daredevil is. I
totally agree. But if the streaming numbers stay down, can they? I mean, can that be the argument? Like, this isn't working. Even though critically it's amazing, people aren't watching it. We're going to do something else.
Yeah, I mean, I think, but
by the way, I'm not arguing for that. For the record.
Yeah. Well, I think if they want to have their cake, there are ways where they could kind of the way, I don't know if you've watched Peacemaker, but the way that they kind of bring Lex back into it post Superman, where they basically go to him for help, and in that way they open that door and give him a foothold. I wonder if there's some that's kind of why I'm thinking about the Thunderbolts
the Suicide
type
Squad
thing.
Yeah,
like I wonder if there's something where they realize, because now we've seen that the CIA has had these interactions with Fisk, I wonder if there's something where they need him to come in and like Bullseye's out of control or something, you know? And they're like, you've known how to handle this guy before.
Yep.
Or like, I wonder if it's something where, but again, to your point, it couldn't be, now I'm back in New York and I'm going to take over the criminal underworld again. It would have to be something where Fisk levels up beyond that to where it's like he is no longer like just mano-a-mano with Daredevil.
Yeah.
He's
or
operating on kind
of
of a global level.
Yeah.
I think that would be satisfying and would fit with, and it would kind of make him even more menacing. So I think that there are things they can do. How that would then work in the context of a Daredevil show is a whole other issue. But we'll talk about this more, and I haven't read that much about the numbers other than when we talked about it. I just don't know if they should, or if they will read into that here, because
no doubt. This is why I want to do a whole episode, because that's like a whole different discussion.
If it's critically acclaimed,
right? I know.
I don't think you want to be like, let's do something totally different. I think that
I saw a rumor that because it's not been going well, like viewership wise, that they may replace Dario with the Duffer Brothers from Stranger Things for season 3. That they'll be the showrunners.
Interesting.
And so that's a whole conversation we're going to do on a different episode, because then you go, like you're saying, like, are you making? I'm not saying the Duffer Brothers would do a bad job, but then why is the blame falling on Dario if people are not watching it? Because he could say, look, I'm delivering you like a critically acclaimed show. It's your job, Disney, to get people to watch it. I made the show as good as possible. Why replace the showrunner? We have to stop. Different conversation.
Yeah.
Pause.
No, I think that's kind of how I feel. I just don't. I think that the issues that Disney has had, or that Marvel has had over the last few years, I think, were really when you had a lot of eyes on the thing, and that thing wasn't good or didn't live up to it.
The opposite.
Yeah, I think that we've talked about.
Let's not overreact to something where it's really good, but people just haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, for instance, I don't think and we won't get down this tangent, but I just think to sum up my thoughts here, we've talked about Thunderbolts. I don't think that Marvel's reaction to that, I mean, that they then brought Jake to do the X-Men thing, which is huge project for them. So even though not many people comparatively watched that movie, I think Marvel still knows that movie worked and was great. And so I hope that they would look at something like this the same way and not be reactionary. Because then if you start making, it's like the worst case scenario.
But then
is
how
you
much
make
of
all
it
these
is
changes.
Disney versus Marvel, and maybe Disney can't parse that out.
Yeah.
Different episode. Okay, let's rank this for the file. Let's rank this bad boy.
I went first last time. I think you have to go first this time.
Okay. One thing I want to double down on is I didn't talk enough about how special that courtroom reveal was. When Matt is talking about, and Daredevil's in this room, and the tension I felt, like my heart was actually beating fast. And as different characters who know are starting to put it together, like Kirsten being like, what? But Karen being like, oh my gosh. And then Fisk being like, you don't want to do this. But the fact that the reveal also hammers home the first episode with the Northern Star. Yeah. Like that the reveal is key to putting Fisk away because of the Northern Star is a perfect example of doing two things with one scene, right? Like now the whole thing is tied up and the Northern Star wasn't just a fun action piece.
Yeah.
It actually was the thing that put him away. And that tension, I didn't pick up my phone one time for 52 minutes to see what anyone was saying. And when it got done, I immediately went live and my heart was still beating fast. Like the beginning of my live, if you watch it, is, wow. Oh my gosh, guys. Because my heart was still beating.
Yeah.
So I'm going to give this episode, this finale, an A-, which is like my second A- of the season. I think I gave episode 4 and episode 8 an A-, like a 93%. And I think on the whole, I've not given it lower than a B-, which would be like an 80%. So I think that this season, every episode lived between 80 and 93 or 94. And you say, Kyle, why not 97? I talked about this. I think just preference-wise, as someone who just watched Loki season 2, I just love the sci-fi time travel, what's going to happen, the twists, more than the grounded twists. So a 93 from me is an incredibly high score given the context. I think that this show is now in the tier with WandaVision, although we call that on our website S tier because of the time it came out, how it was released, etc. Is kind of like a special tier that's almost impossible to recapture and rank. So whether you want to call that its own tier, whatever, but the top tier 1, then is Loki season 2 and Daredevil Born Again season 2 for me. I think there's a pretty clear line after that to Loki season 1, to Moon Knight, to a few others where you say, even maybe Wonder Man, where you say there is a clear, to me, step down from those top 3. So for me overall, this is the top tier of Marvel television. I think I would still go Netflix season 3 as 1, and then this as a close second. So if season 3 is like a 94, this is a 93. And then I would probably go season 1, then Born Again 1, and then season 2 of my complete Daredevil ranking. So Netflix 3, Born Again 2, Netflix 1, Born Again 1, Netflix 2. That's my final word where I sit on May 6th about the whole thing.
Yeah. I think I'm in the same place. And I was also going to go A- here. I think it's always hard with finales because when it lands things well, you almost want to reward it more. But I think on its own, it feels like the top tier of what we've gotten this season. And you're right. That courtroom scene, I think the scenes that will really stick out to me here are the Matt crossing Fisk in the courtroom, and then their final conversation on the stairs, where you see Matt. Like, I love seeing Matt outwit Fisk instead of just taking him down physically, which we've seen him do before. I like also the moment when, like, he outwits him and beats him and then extends the grace. The impressive thing about this season, and I think that more people need to recognize this, like, I think it was Neil that pointed out somewhere that the amount of time we've gotten on screen with Matt is more than any other Marvel character at this point. And the fact that, like, people get lost in this, but can it live up to the Netflix stuff? Like, is it better than the Netflix stuff? And I think what's hard about that is the Netflix stuff exists now, and you've seen it, and you're having to build on that without retreading it. So it's not like a thing where you're rebooting it with a new actor and a new, like, all these new stories are available to you now.
Where a comparison would make more sense.
Yeah, like, it's
this
not
is now
like
just part of it.
Right, like, you can do that with, like, the Amazing Spider-Man and the Raimi Spider-Man. Like, that's fair. But I think here, no, like, you what you wanted was a continuation of these Netflix narratives.
That's right.
And we've done that, but that means that you have to take it somewhere. You can't just do season 3 again. So I think season 3 still is my favorite, but I think what I appreciate so much about season 2 is
of Born Again.
Of Born Again is they built on that, and I think added more weight to that relationship. I think we saw a kind of confrontation with Matt and Fisk that we've never seen before, either in season 1 or 3 of the original show. So that's what I think is, I would imagine, would be very difficult to do, like, coming to a character now that people have very strong feelings about, that's already been broken down and built up and like mangled every which way, and still do something that feels fresh. So the people that like, for me, I get it if this is not as much your bag as season 3, because season 3 was doing such a different kind of thing. But I love that they are actually breaking new ground, and even where they're leaving Matt is it's totally different. It's like the inverse of where season 1 or season 3 left Matt and Fisk now, where it's like this sense that, okay, taking the bad guy down and then going back to life as usual is obviously not working, because then we wind up back in the same cycle. And they made that explicit in this season. And so now him choosing to put himself in the place where he was always taking Fisk and letting Fisk go and like live his life, if that means peace for the city, is really interesting. And so I think that they not only did things qualitatively well, they did things that are thematically, like, they're like thematically resonant, but I think also progressing character.
Pushing it forward.
Yeah. So I think I'm very happy with where this ended, both on a season 2 level and just kind of wrapping the general Daredevil narrative to this point. And it makes me I think I'm more excited now about season 3 of this show than I was for season 2 after the first season. And I think that's kind of the highest praise I could give it.
It's days like these that it makes me really thankful, as cheesy as that sounds, because there is an alternate universe where Kevin Feige retired 10 years ago, or that these movies never took off, to where, just think about what we get to do. Like, we're watching a show about a comic book character that millions of people read about, and it's being done so well.
Mm-hmm.
Like, to the point now where, casting wise, you really couldn't picture somebody else being Daredevil, and you really couldn't picture someone else being Kingpin. And you're getting to see that on screen for a decade, and they're still finding ways to make it new, as you're saying. It's really cool to me that this is the reality we live in, and that it hasn't been given up on. And I just really enjoyed watching it, and I never want to take for granted. Like, we don't know if we'll ever get another Daredevil season. It could get canceled. Like,
right.
At some point, Kevin may just retire and they quit the whole thing. And so I never want to take for granted. Like, last night I had a moment watching the show going, this is really fun. Like, this is cool that this storyline is still being continued.
Yeah.
And that there are still ways they could go take this character and bring him into new worlds. It's just very exciting. But here's the thing. We're not done yet because next week is the Punisher special. So we'll be back here talking about that. I'm not sure if we're going to get a screener to that. I would think we'd have it really soon. But if we do, hopefully we can pre-record the episode so it's ready the second you guys are done. Otherwise, it'll be next Wednesday again that we'll be back here. And then just a quick little look forward. There's a little bit of a gap in mid-May till July, but I'm not worried about filling it. We're going to have X-Men 97 season 2, which will be fun to watch and maybe we won't have a weekly episode, but touch base on occasionally.
We also have Supergirl coming out in June.
Supergirl, I was going to say Nolan's film. Odyssey comes out in early July before Spider-Man. A few other screensaver things I'm going to want to talk about. Mandalorian and Grogu, I'm sure we're going to talk about. I will at least talk about. Disclosure Day comes out in May. I'm excited to do a screensaver episode on that from Steven Spielberg. And then I'm watching Widow's Bay. Do you know Widow's Bay on Apple TV?
Okay, I was gonna tell you that you should watch Widow's Bay.
Okay.
I've only seen the first episode. I haven't seen the
two
second
episodes, and I'm gonna cover that. So that'll be a screensaver episode. And I logged into my. This is crazy. Side note: I logged into my Apple Screeners account because I was curious if I could find Widow's Bay on there to just watch the whole season and not have to wait. I don't have Widow's Bay yet. I emailed them about it, but guess what I found in there? I have Silo season 3, the whole thing, which I've never. So Silo season 3 doesn't come out till July, Robbie.
Oh, I don't even know if I have access to Apple Screeners.
This is something I did on my own. I manipulated it so I can see if I get Severance.
Nice.
But my point is I've never heard that's 2 full months early. The embargo's not till July 1, and I have the whole season. And so, anyways, I'm debating how to handle that. So that's another thing I'll do a screensaver on. So sorry, this is a little tangent. There's going to be a lot of stuff that we're going to have to talk about until Spider-Man. And obviously the ramp up to Spider-Man is going to be massive. You and I are already in the process of making plans of what that looks like. Is it going to be in LA? Is it in Austin together? Is it New York, somewhere else? Comic-Con is right when Spider-Man comes around, and Comic-Con, Marvel Studios is going to be back at Hall H. So there'll be news there for Doomsday. And then it's Vision Quest. That's the next live action show is Vision Quest, which I'm really stoked about just to see Paul Bettany and James Spader back.
Yeah.
And then obviously this is all heading towards the Day of Doom, right? We're heading that direction. Avengers Doomsday in December. So anyway, sorry, that was a tangent. That's just a look forward of what we're going to be doing on our podcast. Exciting times, honestly.
It is. I think this summer is going to be a fun movie summer. I think
box office is already killing last year, which is a really exciting
that's
thing.
good.
Like Devil Wears Prada's ripping. Project Hail Mary ripped. There's a lot of things that are ripping. And they project Toy Story 5. They project Doomsday to rip. My point is this is good for theaters. This is good. I want Odyssey will rip. So if they can just beat projections, hopefully we start going this way.
Yeah. No, I think what is it? What's Thor say to Loki at the end of Ragnarok? Like, I think it's all gonna be just fine.
That's right.
Which I don't mean to say that's not true. But that's, I was just about to say.
Don't follow up with what happens right after that.
I know. I think things are looking really great. But I really do think that this is what's fun about this year as opposed to some past years is we're just kind of starting this ramp up into some really fun stuff both in Marvel and outside of Marvel. So I think man, I love that I'm having to debate which things I'm most excited about, which means that we're going to have a lot to cover.
We'll see you next week. Thanks, guys.